So, Bianca, thank you so much for joining me today. I've admired you from afar. I've done a bit of coaching with you, and you have a wonderful story, and it's inspiring to other people. Do you want to just tell us briefly about your journey with Parkinson's and what your approach was to dealing with it?
I do, but first I want to thank you for inviting me here, tell you how wonderful it was to work with you. And this is a beautiful outcome of all the things you've been doing to see you with this wonderful venue now for us, for those of us who are dealing with Parkinson's or working with people with Parkinson's. So thank you.
Great.
And in April of 2008, I saw a neurologist for the first time. I was at the time experiencing tremor, and that
Yeah.
was the only thing that I knew at that point, the only symptom that I knew that was Parkinson's related. But
Yeah.
I was experiencing other symptoms: tremor, stiffness, my balance was off, penmanship was terrible, small and cramped. And as an English teacher, correcting papers and editing, that
Yeah.
was, I was having some saliva issues in the
Yeah.
evening when I would lay down, and also brain fog and anxiety.
Yeah.
But I wasn't even aware so much of the brain fog and anxiety. There was just so much going on. I was more confused, I think, than anything
Yeah.
else.
Yeah.
So, and see, now I recall, and of course there was the fatigue, the
Yeah.
total exhaustion. I working as a middle school teacher, and I could barely crawl my way through the door in the late afternoon when I would come
Right.
home.
Right.
So that was uh, difficult. So I got to see the neurologist, and he did the standard testing, and
Yeah.
he said, I'm not a gambling man, but I'm 95 to 99% sure that this is Parkinson's, and I've seen a lot of Parkinson's. And he said, your gait isn't so bad right now, and this and that, it's early. And he said, but we have no, this was in 2008. He said, we have no definitive test for Parkinson's.
Right.
So what we do is we prescribe the dopamine drug Sinemet. And, after a while on that, if you find that you're improving, then we know that that's what's going on. And the other thing we're going to do is send you for an MRI just to rule out brain tumor.
Yeah. Yeah. Did that with me too.
Yeah. So I walked out of his office, with a scheduled for an appointment for an MRI and with a prescription for Sinemet.
Right.
And I started to take it, and I started to feel better pretty quickly.
Okay.
So, I mean, I was so new to this whole Parkinson's landscape that I thought at that point in my mind, it was basically the tremor. And I thought, well, this Parkinson's isn't so bad. If I take this medication the rest of my life, it'll just
Right.
be like I have Parkinson's. I mean, I had no concept of what was to lie ahead and how that was going to work. So,
Yeah. Just if I can interject there, it's one of the things that I think is probably a bit of a risk for people. I don't have anything against medication, but if you take the medication and don't do anything else, I think it's a bit of a slippery slope. Do you agree with
yeah.
that?
Well, yes, but at the time, I didn't know what anything else was either,
Right.
and
Right.
that, which is a segue to the second part of my journey, and
Yeah.
that was, I was feeling so poorly even prior to my diagnosis of Parkinson's. I had put in my paperwork for retirement,
Okay.
so I spent the next year of the remainder of 2008 actually reading all that I could about Parkinson's and exploring different groups. I went to a regular support group
Yeah.
um, here in Northern California in Hayward. There's a Parkinson's center, and they had an open house, and I went there and listened to lectures and
Yeah.
read. So I was getting more active that way. But in terms of like my personal self-care schedule,
Right.
I wasn't going to yoga class anymore because I was too stiff. I wasn't riding my bicycle anymore because my balance was off and I was falling. There was a card making class that I used to take. I used to go basically for for the social aspect, because I've never been good with handicrafts, but I couldn't do it at all. And then so I, so those things were dropping by the wayside, and I was doing more of the reading and research. And I like to, I was almost going to try to avoid the word research, because I think so many people that I've met spend so much time researching that they never do the next step, which is action.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a little caveat there,
Yeah. Okay, can I ask you ask you something else about mental health? So you mentioned anxiety. What else was going on? I mean, obviously you were out there doing a lot, socializing, whatever, which must have helped. But how was your mental health?
This question gives me cause to ponder, because there was anxiety around the confusion, like, who am I? What's going on? How come I'm not doing this the way I used to? That kind of identification, maybe. But I did have a cause. In other words, I retired, and I wasn't just going to sit there. I was going to explore, going to the Parkinson's group, going here, going there. I mean, that became my job.
Yeah.
So, and in that way, I had a purpose.
Yeah, very important.
And when I found Qi Gong, then I really zeroed in on a purpose.
Okay. So tell us why you were attracted to Qi Gong, and tell us a bit about what it is for people who don't know.
Okay, well, first of all, as I said, I had, given up a number of activities, and I was looking for things to do to help myself physically. And a friend of mine suggested that I attend with her this Qigong weekend, Heal Yourself, Heal the World. And she told me that she had a friend who had cancer and who had used a number of alternative treatments and methods, including Qigong, and she felt that Qigong was helpful in her recovery. But I paused, because at that point I was starting to budget for somebody to come in and help me do things that I used to be able to do for myself. And I thought, oh, I've got to, if I'm going to start budgeting for that, and then I'm going to do this weekend. And then I thought, well, maybe, just maybe, whatever is given here will give me the tools that I'll be able to do a little more for myself.
Yeah.
So I'll try. And I went, and immediately I felt something going on, but I was also having cognitive difficulties, so that when the Qigong Master Ming Teng Gu, when he was explaining these wisdom healing Qigong practice moves, sometimes I was having trouble getting my mind and body to work together.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Which is kind of a perfect scenario for what's actually happening, right? The mind and body are not working; they're not cooperating as they used to. So anyway, but I could feel that something was going on, and it felt good. So I was anxious to go back the next day. It was a 2-day, Saturday, Sunday. And again, it felt good. And I'm not an impulse buyer. I usually walk out of something like that and don't buy anything, but I bought every CD and every DVD and every book, and I came home and started practicing for 3 hours a day, which is what they recommended if you have a serious or chronic condition.
Yeah. Yeah. 3 hours a day is quite a commitment. I did that for about a year. I've slackened off because I'm doing a load of other things, but you really have to make a lifestyle change, don't you?
Yes, for me, I have to admit it wasn't as difficult. If I had been working my full-time teaching job, that would have really been, very challenging.
Of course.
So, and when I work with people, if they've got that kind of a load, we don't start there at all. That's aspirational.
You work up to it. Yeah.
So, but I could do it more easily. And also, even when I did days that I did substitute teaching, as I started feeling better, I could still do morning, afternoon, and evening practice.
Break it up. Yeah. Okay, so for those who don't know, what is Qigong?
Qigong is everywhere because it's energy. And when we're doing wisdom healing or other types of Qigong, we're pulling in and calling in the healing energy,
Right.
because I'm going to paraphrase a very lovely little explanation that was given by Ming Tong Gu that I really think helps
Lovely.
explain. So let's say that there's, we're going about our day and there's all kinds of energy in the background. It's sort of like we're in the house and we have the radio on, old school radio with the dial,
Yeah.
and it's caught between stations so that there's just some light static in the background. That would be the energy, and the energy of our home is different from the energy when we step outside and that kind of thing. And then, if we start fine-tuning things and tuning in that dial, we'll find that there's radioactive energy, there's heat energy, light energy, sound energy, ultraviolet, all kinds of energy. So when we practice Qigong, we first do what we call set a Qi field. And by doing that, we're tuning in to the healing energy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're inviting that to come in.
So
And
that's like the energy from the earth and from the sky and from nature and everything.
exactly, you nailed it. That's exactly it. And so, and why, and we focus on the energy because it's sort of like that's what charges our battery. And there's the thought concept that in traditional Chinese medicine, that each of the major organs houses the energy from certain emotions,
Yeah.
both negative and positive energy. So as we go through life, something great happens, that gets registered, something traumatic happens, that gets registered. And we sort of need to process, cleanse, you might say detox regularly.
Yeah.
And we don't, well, for me, Qigong is what allowed that to happen. And then those energy channels start to open and the healing energy starts to really come through. And that's what happens with, I don't know that they use the term medical Qigong so much anymore, but with a healing Qigong practice.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. It's interesting because I've done a lot of acupuncture.
Uh-huh.
In fact, my wife is an acupuncturist, which is
Oh,
nice.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so the concept of energy is a little bit alien to the Western medical model, but it's there. It can actually be traced electronically and whatever. But it's about balancing the energies in the body. And the really interesting thing for me when I started Qigong was realizing that you can also balance that in tune with energies outside the body.
Yes. Yes.
So fantastic practice.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, talking about anxiety, a little quick tip here is that very often anxiety is happens when we think about the future.
Yeah.
And if I'm thinking about a meeting or something that's upcoming that I might be a little nervous about, I do the simple La Qi practice with the, having the palms of the hands facing each other, energy in, energy out. And I visualize that situation, and I visualize that all is well. Again, not with an expectation of an outcome,
Right.
but more of an aspiration.
Yeah. 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 That's really interesting. In fact, it brings up another question, which is, did you have the aspiration to heal? Did you feel you were going to heal, or did you just do the practice because it felt the right thing to do and see what happens?
I would say both. I've always been an optimist. I was a little girl that if somebody gave me a pile of horse manure and said happy birthday, I would get a shovel and say, I know there's a pony in there. I mean, so there was that, like, why not? But also it was my job, and that's what I tell the people I work with. It's your job, and that felt good. For the first time in my life, my main job was to take care of myself. I had never assigned that as my job before.
Yes.
So there was a purpose, and the more I did it, the better I felt. The more I started feeling like, it's like I have to get this message out now. There are ways to deal with this. And even, and I wasn't sure I was going to completely heal. And the fact that the tremor was the last thing to go was very annoying.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned to you that at one point I thought, gee, if I just chopped off my arm, I wouldn't have Parkinson's anymore.
Yeah, no, I know
That was
that.
a on the dark side for sure. I didn't often go there, but
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, tremor is pretty persistent for me still, but I'm just thinking, well, there we are. It'll do what it does, and it's beautiful to hear your story. So carry on. So you're practicing qigong and you're seeing some results from it. Or was the recovery gradual, or was it in significant steps, or just how did you realize that you were healing?
it was gradual. And you know, the first indication to me that I was healing was that I was on the Cinemet 3 times a day, and I think the doses were like 4 hours apart.
Uh-huh.
And normally, after 2.5 hours, I would start feeling like I needed more.
Right.
And not too long after I started my 3 hours of practice every day, it got to be, like late afternoon, and I realized I hadn't taken my midday dose of Cinemet.
Right.
And I sort of freaked out and then I remembered reading, well, you can just, skip it, just take the next one. So, but then like within about a week of that, it happened again
Yeah.
that I forgot. And I thought, okay, your body's trying to tell you something. Because it wasn't too long ago that you were looking at your watch and like, is it 4 hours yet? Is it 4 hours yet? So
Yeah.
there's something going on here. I think you need to reduce the medication.
Yeah.
But that became, that was much more problematic in 2008 than it is now.
Okay.
People, because I couldn't get any help. And I just kind of figured it out myself. I remember that when my autistic son was on Ritalin,
Yeah.
that he had an adverse reaction and that we had to gradually take him off. And I kind of remembered how we titrated that, and that's what I did. But now, people can go to their compounding pharmacist. Many neurologists have a much more liberal attitude about medication and scheduling of medication now. So it's a different scene now.
Yeah, it's more flexible.
Yeah.
So you were doing the qigong and getting some benefit. Were you doing other things? Were you changing your diet, or what other things in terms of your lifestyle were you doing?
Well, my diet for a very long time had been very good. There wasn't much at all to change because I had years before, unfortunately, had the condition Candida, and so I was, doing no sugar, no yeast, no gluten, no carbonation, no caffeine, no alcohol, no vinegar. I think that was, yeah. So I was already doing that. The only thing was, occasionally with the Parkinson's, I drank coffee because depending on what article I read, caffeine is good for Parkinson's, then it's not good for Parkinson's. Finally, I just let it go, but that was interspersed in the diet. So that was the diet. As far as my activities, the Qigong took up 3 hours. I still walked. My walking, oddly enough, as I was healing from Parkinson's, my walking was becoming more difficult because as those energy channels opened, I could feel pain in certain areas where I guess things had been so condensed before that I hadn't felt pain. So I was starting to have, and sometimes my legs would swell and things like that. So, and that's when you heal, it's like peeling an onion, So as the major condition started to abate, then some other things started to pop up that needed attention.
Yeah, indeed.
So I was doing the Qigong, I was doing walking. I didn't get back on the bike because I didn't want to do anything else that would jeopardize my legs if I fell on the bike. Well, with the Qigong is, there's meditation, there's a sound healing meditation and other meditations. So I was getting more into meditation. And also I didn't realize that this was part of a practice that I was doing. And it's something that I came to on my own. And since then, I've seen it all over the place as a recommendation for healing. And that's the gratitude practice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Gratitude, appreciation. And so every evening I would find 3 things to be great, that at minimum of 3 things that had happened during the day to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And in the morning, I would go over those things again, or whatever I needed to do to be positive. I would, have gratitude, like I woke up and I'm feeling good, or, or I'm breathing or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Gratitude practice is very powerful, very, really makes a change in the way you perceive the world.
Well, I tell the people that I work with that you can't hold negativity, be it anxiety or whatever, hatred. You can't hold negativity and gratitude and appreciation in the same space. When those negative thoughts start coming in,
Yeah.
Shift gears.
So aligned to that, do you feel like stress, because you stopped working, presumably that made a big difference in itself, just knocking out a big stress factor? Do you feel stress is part of a contributor to the condition?
I do. And I think for a lot of people like myself, I didn't even know what stress was. I used to laugh when people would talk about, oh, I'm under such stress, or they'd look at me and say, you're under such stress. And I would look like, what are you talking about? If I couldn't see it, I didn't believe in it, which is, and now I'm working with energy, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, as a matter of fact, I talked about that year 2008, that in April I saw the neurologist, but I was feeling so poorly that when we had our ski week here in California, when we had the ski week in February, I actually took myself on a vacation to the island of Jamaica. I just felt like I needed a beach, and I had been there as a child, and I always wanted to go back. Yeah. And I was so surprised at how much better I felt sitting on that chaise, in the sun, and, going in and out of the water and everything. So I realized, oh, this is what it's like not to be stressed. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's too easy for us to become habituated to stress and not realize the kind of contraction that's causing in the body.
Yes, but the other thing is that a certain amount of stress is necessary.
Right.
And so, because it's so easy to see things in black and white terms, oh, stress is bad, and then people get stressed out because they're stressed out, so it compounds it. So it's also a challenge that we can meet and deal with it using the tools in our toolkit, whatever they are, including just breathing in the moment.
Yeah. Tell us a bit more about your recovery. How long was it before even the tremor went?
Well, I say the tremor was the last to go, and that was probably 2+ years.
Yeah, no, that seems fairly quick.
It was fairly quick. And, I wonder how much of that had to do with Qi Gong being, my big focus.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know, because I wish I could figure it out. Part of it is that I probably approached my Parkinson situation, my personal situation, a little bit differently at square one.
Yeah.
Because as I've shared before, in other interviews, many people, when they get the Parkinson's diagnosis, and I understand this, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to them. So that's a crushing blow. The worst thing that ever happened to me happened many years before, when my autistic son got the diagnosis of autism.
Yeah.
So I had been there, and I knew what it was like to just completely be leveled by something. And I thought, I can't let that happen. Now I've got my autistic son, and I've got my grandchildren from my other son, and I want to be around. I want to, so I decided that I would just hit the deck running. And that's like, so that's why I started reading everything I could and going to groups and this and that. Yeah.
So we've been through most of the questions I had. Is there anything that you would like to communicate to people, in terms of an approach, or whether it's Qigong or whatever it is, just to encourage people to take control?
I think just active self-care, mindful self-compassion.
Right.
It's very difficult when you're dealing with a chronic disease not to sometimes not only get angry at the disease, but get angry at yourself. And that does not help. And I would say, whatever you're doing for yourself that feels good, that feels right, that you come away feeling better, healthier, that's wonderful. In my case, it was the Qi Gong. And I know a lot of people hear my story and then, want to explore Qi Gong, and that's wonderful. I would encourage that. I would also say it requires patience. If you're going to do a Qi Gong practice, do it for at least 3 months before you try to do any sort of evaluation of it. And I would suggest going into it with, if you could, a minimum of 90 minutes. And don't forget gratitude, practicing the positive in everything, including the situation. I treated Parkinson's as a visiting professor. I mean, I didn't know that at the time that it was just going to visit, but it was like, okay, I have this condition. I always want to learn from whatever is going on around me. So how can I learn from this condition? What about the outside world? What about myself? Trying to make connections and things like that. Use it as an opportunity to be a detective, but don't get so caught up in the research that you don't do the action.
Yeah, fantastic. Great. Well, thank you very much for that. It's really useful and it's encouraging to people, and I hope people do follow what you've been doing. Great. That's been lovely to talk to you again, and thank you very much for appearing on this.
You're welcome.